federal law applies on the majority of companies, majority of employees and employers actually here in the UAE, with the exclusion of the DIFC specifically. And I wouldn't describe it as a challenge to understand the civil law. It's quite clear, quite straightforward. However, it's our responsibility and liability as lawyers to spread the information and to make companies familiar with these regulations and laws. We are applying civil law here in the UAE for individuals and commercial law for companies, and there is a code, and it's quite different than the common law system. We depend on the codes, we depend on the laws, and it gives more clarity, in my opinion, and it's not very challenging. Besides, don't forget that the companies and the businesses have been working on this system for many years now, from the beginning of the nation, 50 years plus. So that's not a very, let's say, challenging area to be explored. Many people have been functioning in this area.
So one of the things that really struck me when I got here, arrived in Dubai, was that the DIC seems to be home to lots of big international banks, financial institutions, big multinationals. But the majority of the companies that you see in the UAE are what we call incorporated onshore. And one of the things I've seen an absolute explosion in since I've been here, and it's only been 4 years, is the number of what we call free zones in the UAE. Now, the DIFC is a financial free zone. So if you're a finance company, big international company, it makes sense that you're there. And I think the idea was that international businesses have a lot of familiarity with English law court systems, and it's a zone within the UAE where they feel comfortable operating. And you've got the equivalent now in Abu Dhabi with the ADG. But there are all these other free zones. And then you have onshore companies. What's the difference, if there is one, between a classical onshore company and a company incorporated, for example, in a free zone like Fujairah?
Well, see, from a legal perspective, there is no difference unless this free zone is excluded and they have their own regulations in terms of applicable laws. But as you said, the DIFC is only exclusion with application of the common law. Other than that, most of the free zones, they are catering a specific sector. Each free zone have a certain sector, industrial, etc. But then the applicable laws are all the same. They are all applying the UAE Federal Law, whether it's on the partner or the employees, the labor law, it's all applied by the federal law in general. So this is something people need to understand. If you are in a free zone, yet you are not excluded from applying the mainland law and the mainland courts as well. Though those are the ones who will be looking after your disputes and cases.
Okay, so the free zones cater for certain industries. So depending on what you're looking to do as an activity, you pick and choose accordingly. Now, one of the things that everyone outside of the UAE always knew was if you wanted to set up a business in the UAE, which everyone wanted to do, you know, when times were booming, was that you had to have a local partner. So you had to be friends with an Emirati.
That's not the case
to be able to get
anymore.
set up. That's no longer the case.
You can be a friend with an Emirati, but you don't need a local partner by law for the majority of the activities. As you know, it was obvious. I mean, that's a major change here in the system. There is some exceptions of some certain activities, but I can say that the majority of the activities do not require a local partner anymore, which makes it more transparent and easier for business and more attractive for investors.
So the process of setting up a company onshore now is what? How does someone go about that? Is it open to foreign investors?
Yes.
Okay, maybe you could tell us a bit more about that.
So basically, the process is quite straightforward, and so it's a smooth process, but you need to follow up certain steps, such as drafting an MOA, registering that with the authorities, the economic departments.
An MOA is a
memorandum of association. Okay, and those are the formal steps. Having a lease, whether if it's an office, factory, etc., depending on the local authorities' requirements. And I think this is one of the smoothest processes around the world, and it's very fast compared to any other jurisdiction. And this is one of the reasons it attracts a lot of SMEs, startups, businesses to establish and to choose Dubai as a place to start their business.
And I think a lot of people around the world think the reason for setting up in the UAE is the tax benefits. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about what role tax plays currently in the UAE corporate landscape.
Well, it's always a huge advantage, even though with the introduction of the new corporate tax this year, still it's a very competitive competitive percentage compared to other different jurisdictions. But that's not the only factor. As you know, there is multiple factors. I will be focused more into the legal side of it. There is many business factors, economical factors, safety factors, as you know. But then today we are also supported by new rules, new regulations, which actually enhances this advantage of the UAE as being a good place, competitive place to run your business.
And maybe you could explain a little bit to our audience about the fact that there are 7 Emirates in the UAE, right? So if you're setting up a company, is it a UAE company you're setting up, or is it a Dubai company you're setting up, or an Abu Dhabi Fajera company? How does that work at a federal level in terms of incorporation?
Here also I will include free zones as well.
Yeah.
As you know, there is 7 Emirates, and you have the choice to establish in the mainland in any of these 7 Emirates, depending on your activity. And some activities prefer to have a location in the free zone, but this decision, if you decided to go with a free zone, you need to consider that you're limited to distribute out of the country and not being able to trade in the mainland area in general. However, the decision depends on your preference as a business model. Do you want to trade in Dubai itself? Do you want to have a physical location in Dubai itself, or perhaps a different emirate is suitable for you? This is the only difference. And besides the activity, if your activity is suitable for a certain city, then this will be your main factor for such a decision.
But in terms of the law that applies, that's a UAE federal law.
In terms of the law, the UAE Federal Law applies on all emirates, with exception of some regulations in specific sectors.
Yeah.
For example, you have the real estate specific regulations here in Dubai, the rental rules and regulations specifically for Dubai itself. But you have the federal law, which can cover the civil transactions and the commercial transactions, which apply on the 7 emirates.
And you mentioned earlier that you no longer need a local partner to set up.
Yeah.
So does that mean you can have 100% foreign ownership now?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. With most of the activities, yes.